It is May 25, 2021, and it's news time on Spectrum Television. Making headlines tonight, the extraordinary summit of the Lake Chad Basin Commission has taken place today, May 25, 2021, in Abuja, Nigeria. The President of the Republic of Cameroon, Paul Biya, was represented by the Minister of State Secretary General at the Presidency, Ferdinand Gongo, plus the Douala Economic Forum, which opened yesterday, May 24, 2021, here in Douala, has ended today with the objectives of developing the transport, education and public welfare sectors, amongst others. Details of the stories and more will be yours in a short while. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining in on the 8 p.m. Balunga Primetime Newscast on Spectrum Television. We'll kickstart right away in the French language with Leila Renganzo. Good evening, Leila.
Bonsoir à vous, Christelle Lassec. Mesdames, bonsoir. Monsieur, bonsoir. Et merci d'être avec nous. Il est 20h sur les antennes de Spectrum Télévision. C'est le journal. Le sommet extraordinaire de la commission du bassin du lac Tchad se tient depuis ce mardi à Abuja. C'est la capitale du Nigeria. Le chef de l'État camerounais est représenté par le ministre d'État secrétaire général de la présidence de la République, Ferdinand Gongo. Notons que c'est le premier sommet du genre qui se tient depuis le décès de l'ex-président tchadien Idriss Déby.
Le gouvernement de la commission du bassin du lac Tchad. C'est le premier sommet qui se tient depuis le décès de l'ancien président du Tchad, Idriss Déby. Le président de la République du Cameroun est représenté par le ministre d'État, secrétaire général de la présidence de la République, Ferdinand Gongo. Au menu des travaux, la situation sécuritaire dans le bassin du lac Tchad. Il est notamment question pour les pays membres de cette commission de voir dans quelle mesure soutenir efficacement le Tchad, principalement après les attaques subies par ce pays qui ont vu la disparition d'Idriss Déby. En effet, le Tchad déploie sur le terrain près de 6000 hommes dans le cadre de la lutte contre le terrorisme en Afrique. Il est donc question de sécuriser ce pays, confronté de plus en plus aux attaques de la secte terroriste Boko Haram. La rencontre de ce 25 mai permet justement d'évoquer les questions liées au financement et à la logistique de la force multinationale MIX, force mise en place par les pays membres de la Commission du bassin du lac Tchad pour lutter contre le terrorisme.
La suite de ce journal, c'est avec vous, Christelle Lassec.
Exactly, Leila. Actors of the palm oil sector have concerted this day in Yaoundé with the objective to reflect on ways to uplift the sector. Let's get more of this consultation from this excerpt conducted by our reporter, Olivier Mbozuke.
The first ever edition of the Douala Economic Forum has ended today, May 25, 2020, with solutions on developing the transportation, health, internet, education, real estate and public welfare sectors retained.
To retain is that, first of all, there's quite a bit of work that the Douala City Council is doing to be able to solve these problems, and that they are involving the different ministerial bodies that are concerned. Secondly, there's a one-stop shop that the Douala Urban Council has put in place for people, for the public to be able to get all information about procedures and to be able to process their documents. So for any questions they have concerning, say, land titles, or especially what is allowed to be done, very important point, what is allowed to be done in the area in which they would like to invest, to buy land or to build or, construct, have a project, it is important to go to that one-stop shop first and find out what the urban plan has in mind for that area, because otherwise your building permit will probably not go through. So
she added that the forum intends to bring more road in the city of Douala in order to make it attractive to investors.
Concerned, there are also some thoughts to be able to build more roads. There was a suggestion done by the President of the Order of Architects as well to not only expand horizontally but also to expand in terms of flyovers, that is to expand vertically as well. The expansion of Douala, the areas, Douala also is basically in their plans is that they plan to expand in the north, the east, and some parts of the west, that is the Bonaberi part of Douala. Those are the areas where there's still a lot of land, where extensions will be done. So,
being the first of its kind, the participants are hoping the forum can achieve its goal in 10 years with determination and hard work.
we have some means, and part of this economic forum is to be able to find ways to attract means. We heard several times about making Douala attractive to investors and then to people who want to visit, and to residents. So the first thing is to make Douala interesting enough for investors to come in. That's the best way to get the funds. The second thing is that yes, I do believe we can get there. Now, in how much time depends on our will. We have the expertise. We have all kinds of experts from the urban planners to architects and to civil and structural engineers, surveying engineers, and so on. So really, we have the expertise. We just need to be able to put ourselves to work. And from this forum, I think it's a beginning. We need to continue after this.
The Douala Economic Forum, which opened in the city of Douala on May 23, 2021, is expected to hold annually in the city.
That was a report from Catherine Cornet on the Douala Economic Forum, which ended today in Douala. And now let's take on this interview put together by our reporter Olivier Mbuzike on the actors of the palm oil sector who concerted today in Yaoundé. One of the main reasons why we started with this project in the first place was because we discovered that palm oil production was like one of the main drivers when it comes to deforestation, not just in Cameroon, but along the tropics generally. So the main goal, one of our main objectives, was to see how we can work around policy, but also at the field level to drive sustainability when it comes to palm oil development. So our goal is basically to increase production, but at the same time curbing deforestation. So that's one of the main challenges. So improving productivity definitely mean we are contributing in improving the livelihood of smallholders, which we also saw was a big challenge when it comes to the palm oil value chain generally. We know, like every government, we have to develop, and within the context of this program, like what we are saying is we acknowledge that development is very important, and palm oil is one of those aspects that the government is looking at exploiting to bring in development in our country, but we also need to understand that the forest and biodiversity generally is important. And what we have been trying to do is see how we produce palm oil sustainably. And what we are doing is we are working with all the key stakeholders, that's at the policy level, with the government in coming up with the National Palm Oil Strategy, which is going to give strategic orientation when it comes to palm oil development. And with the agro-industries, we are working with them for them to embrace sustainability standards. That's RSPO, which is a roundtable on sustainable palm oil production, which looks at sustainable production of palm oil, and these has like different criteria that have been defined on how to carry out palm oil production. And for smallholders, it's basically around working with the smallholders on best practices on how we can improve production by improved seedlings, increasing the extraction rates from milling, looking at how to curb loss like of fresh fruit bunches, which is a big challenge right now in Cameroon, and not just cutting down forests or looking at expansion generally.
Système alimentaire, le Cameroun fait face à de nombreux défis, des défis qui jusqu'ici ne permettent pas à chacun des Camerounais de pouvoir manger à sa faim. C'est en tout cas ce qui ressort de cet élément d'Olivier Mbuzike.
Le système alimentaire camerounais est confronté depuis quelques années à un certain nombre de défis sur plusieurs plans.
En 2050, la population va doubler, la croissance démographique va vite, et à côté de cela, nous faisons face à des crises sociopolitiques, du changement climatique, des crises dues aux catastrophes météo, ce qui compromet énormément notre système alimentaire. Donc nous avons de plus en plus une population qui augmente.
Il se pose, selon les experts, le besoin de reformer le système alimentaire du Cameroun pour faire face à ce challenge afin non seulement d'éradiquer la pauvreté, mais aussi de lutter efficacement contre la faim dans le monde.
Nous avons adopté une méthode inclusive qui consiste en un dialogue national et régional où les différentes parties prenantes vont contribuer par rapport à ce qu'ils vivent au quotidien dans les systèmes alimentaires pour nous permettre d'avoir un système alimentaire durable inclusive et qui puisse permettre d'atteindre les objectifs de développement durable.
C'est cette stratégie nationale qui était en débat ce 25 mai à Yaoundé et qui sera présentée aux experts internationaux durant le premier sommet des Nations Unies sur le système alimentaire auquel le Cameroun prendra part. L'objectif de ce sommet sera de lancer de nouvelles mesures audacieuses et progresser dans la réalisation de chacun des 17 objectifs de développement durable.
Logements sociaux de Mbanga Pongo, ils sont désormais occupés à hauteur de 11%. Des acquéreurs ont en effet reçu les clés de leur maison ce mardi. C'était au cours d'une cérémonie présidée par le ministre de l'Habitat et du Développement urbain, Célestine Ketia-Cortez. Le compte rendu d'Oriane Danquin.
L'état de ces clés montre à suffisance que l'attente aura été longue.
Nous, on est très contents maintenant. On a supporté, mais ça a bien donné. Chacun il est très content.
Comme Moussa Bobo, ils ont été nombreux à être dans la joie ce 25 mai 2021 après la réception des clés de leur logement à Banga Bakoko dans le 3e arrondissement de la ville de Douala. Le projet 10 000 logements sociaux et 50 000 parcelles constructibles a été lancé en 2013 pour résoudre un problème lié à la croissance démographique.
La journée mondiale de l'habitat existe parce qu'il y a un réel problème de logement des populations mondiales du fait de la vertigineuse croissance démographique. Tous ces projets prescrits par le chef de l'État ont eu des fortunes diverses. Mais nous avons tenu à regarder dans la direction du chef de l'État et à soutenir surtout cette cible qui avait besoin du grand soutien du crédit foncier pour pouvoir entrer en possession de leur logement.
En effet, le ministre de l'Habitat et du Développement urbain a demandé au crédit foncier de surseoir à certains manquements dans les dossiers des acquéreurs, manquements qui seront corrigés, le plus important pour l'instant étant la possession du logement.
Et je voudrais dire merci à l'ensemble des acteurs, le triptyque, la mature, la SIC, le crédit foncier qui a bien voulu accepter la convention de l'État en attendant que le processus d'obtention de titres de propriété se fasse. Vous savez, c'est une nouveauté pour le Cameroun, copropriétaire, syndic de copropriété, etc. On est en train d'avancer vers des actions légales qui permettent que tous ces acquéreurs soient copropriétaires et de leurs espaces et des espaces communs.
Ils sont plus de 85 personnes à avoir reçu ce jour les clés de leur logement, portant à 11% le taux d'occupation du site de Banga Bakoko, ici à Douala.
And now we take you over to Kumba, where the Kumba 1 Subdivisional Council has embarked on a special cleanup campaign to give a facelift to the town ahead of the funeral ceremony of late Senator Victor Esemisongo Mukete III in Kumba. As early as 8 a.m. this morning, workers of the Kumba 1 Council, led by the mayor, Prince Eseme Moses Esembe, were seen cleaning up public places. Gutters, roadside walks and garbages were attended to. The town will be hosting from Thursday, May 27, 2021, a number of dignitaries who will come to give their last respect to the elderly statesman. Let's get more of this cleanup campaign from the mayor of Kumba 1 in the following excerpt.
I'm out today with my workers of hygiene and sanitation and the General Labour Service to make sure that we keep the town very clean and set for the funeral of our patriarch, the Paramount Chief Senator Bongidi Mukete, which is slated for this weekend, Friday and Saturday. We had the Kumba clean-up campaign which passed on the first Thursday of this month. We realized that the people, even irrespective of the numerous announcements we sent through the media houses, did not take it seriously. And so we have decided to come out to go around and see those persons who have not complied with this clean-up campaign to make sure that they do same. And so we are going around and seeing business places of persons who, though got information about this, have never bothered to keep their places clean. And we are even moving around with some tools to make sure that we ourselves can clean up areas that are meant for the council. So that is why we're out today. The entire team is out, the Secretary General, the Chief of Hygiene and Sanitation, and even the chief of general labor, all of us are in the field. And I think this exercise is going to continue up to Thursday, that I suppose the town should be very, very clean, for visitors that are going to come to the town for the funeral of Paramount Chief.
In commemoration of the International Biodiversity Day, celebrated every May 22, the FACO Divisional Delegate for Environment, Protection of Nature and Substance Development, Mercy Bo, along with ISACAM and some governmental, non-governmental organizations, have given a facelift to the Down Beach neighborhood in commemoration of this day. Catherine Cornell.
The Divisional Delegates for Environment, Protection of Nature and Sustainable Development for FACO Division, together with ISACAM and 4 NGOs, carried out a cleaning up campaign at the Limbe Down Beach in commemoration of this year's International Day for Biodiversity.
When doing sensitization, we are not sensitizing only the neighborhoods because we are at the beach. Most of these waste, the waste we find here, are not from those who live around this place. Some of them are washed from towns, like from Boya. You can't believe that we have waste here all the way from Boya, right here. And others are from neighboring villages, even from the ocean. Those who maybe fishermen, travelers, they drink and they just throw their waste bottles in the ocean. So we have to do a serious sensitization, because the waste we find here, I don't think it's only from this community. So we should let people change their mindsets. That's the first thing. People should love the environment, right? We should know that our biodiversity is all what we have from nature. Our medicine, our food, everything we have is from biodiversity, from the plants and that live in the ocean.
The locals were educated on the importance to keep the beach clean and to avoid dumping in the sea.
We are at the beach at Limbe, trying to carry out sensitization, clean up, and to also inspect, check how the people who use the beach more often, like the boats around, the fishermen, how they dispose their waste, because we know that there's a lot of pollution and we have realized that plastics pose a lot of problems in the environment and affects our aquatic life. So in order to make this day a memorable day, we are out here to do beach cleanup and also to tell the users of the beach.
The International Day was commemorated under the theme, "We are part of the solution."
Today, May 25, is commemorated as the World Africa Day during the 3rd edition of the United Bank for Africa African Conversation held today through video conference. The Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros Adhanom, reiterated the need for Africa to produce its own vaccine in the face of this global pandemic, as the vaccine imported are not enough for the entire continent. Details in the following report.
Although Africa has not yet seen the same scale of devastation from the COVID-19 pandemic as some other regions, the impact has still been profound for lives, livelihoods, health systems, and economies. The poor and vulnerable are hit the hardest. Africa has not escaped COVID-19, and we cannot let down our guard. What's happening now in many other parts of the world can also happen in our continent. With the support of COVAX, as you know, 47 countries in the African continent have started vaccinating. However, the volumes of vaccines are nowhere near enough. So far, Africa has administered just over 25 million doses, or 1.5% of the global total. This is very tragic. WHO is working day in and day out to bring immediate solutions for the equitable distribution of vaccine doses. But it's clear that Africa cannot rely solely on imports of vaccines from the rest of the world. We must build that capacity not only for COVID-19 vaccines, but for other vaccines and medical products. The cooperation of the private and public sectors will be essential in this effort. I know that this is an area that President Kagame feels very strongly about and is working towards, and he's taking concrete action. WHO is also working with the African Union to establish the African Medicines Agency, where we will continue our financial and technical support to establish the African Medicines Agency and to build a strong regulatory institution for Africa. More than anything else, the pandemic has demonstrated that health is not a luxury item or simply an outcome of development. It's a human right and a prerequisite for social and economic development. And
now we take on our international page with a VOA.
Former Biafran fighter Ide Obasi says he has renewed hope for an independent Biafra. In the late 1960s, he fought for the region's independence in the Biafran War.
But that time we used to say 2 weeks, no food. Only thing where they will give you, you carry a kit, come out with your water bottle, they full of mogogoro. You go there to fight. If you die, no concern anybody.
Obasi was only 20 years old in 1967 when the Civil War started, and he was immediately recruited. He says many of his friends were killed fighting the Nigerian state, but he managed to survive the 3-year war that ended in 1970 with the defeat of the Biafran movement. While Obasi still supports secession, he says fighting must be avoided.
Don't fight another war, because children will finish. If they can do it amicably and peacefully.
But in January, the separatist group Indigenous People of Biafra, or IPOB, launched an armed security unit. Its aim is to push back on Fulani herders, often blamed for clashes in the region. Nigerian authorities consider the unit as subversive and have cracked down on the armed group, sending security forces to states where it is active. The government also banned IPOB's activities, which are led by British-Nigerian activist Nnamdi Kanu. Some Nigerian political analysts say IPOB's demands for independence are unlikely to succeed.
It's legitimate for them to make demands for separation. But the reality on the ground is that it's difficult for Nigeria to separate. We've been together for over a century. We have intermarried significantly. We have migrated extensively.
In recent months, a Yoruba separatist group has appeared, also calling for the creation of an independent state. The so-called Oduduwa Republic would include the southwestern parts of the country, including Nigeria's economic capital, Lagos. Analyst Jibrin Ibrahim says political marginalization is to blame for the rise in these separatist movements.
A lot of Nigerians are very dissatisfied with the political community we have. They feel it is not structured to serve their interests. They feel there are significant levels of marginalization that makes their citizenship ineffective.
Experts predict agitation by these movements will likely increase as the country heads towards elections in 2023. But they say the Nigerian government is unlikely to cede any power to the separatists, and the conflict will be too dangerous to pursue. Timothy Obiezu for VOA News, Abuja, Nigeria.
Sport, basketball. Après la pause, la African League reprend dès demain mercredi à la faveur des quarts de finale. On assistera notamment au match opposant FAP du Cameroun à la redoutable formation du Zamalek. Vous le savez, ça se passe à Kigali, c'est au Rwanda.
Après la pause, les équipes qualifiées pour les quarts de finale de la Basketball Africa League qui se joue au Rwanda redescendent sur le parquet de l'Arena Kigali ce mercredi 26 mai. C'est notamment le cas des basketteurs camerounais de FAP qui affrontent leurs homologues égyptiens du Zamalek. Une équipe assez redoutable qui a terminé deuxième au classement général à l'issue de la phase de poule. Cette équipe a d'ailleurs battu en match en retard lundi soir le groupement sportif des pétroliers d'Algérie par 97 à 64. Ce score qui traduit la grande domination des Égyptiens leur a justement permis d'occuper la deuxième place au classement général, contrairement aux Camerounais de FAP qui se sont qualifiés pour les quarts de finale en terminant meilleur troisième à l'issue de la phase de poule.
FAP comes back, Aruna with a heat check. He's on fire.
Les quarts de finale de ce mercredi vont donc opposer le deuxième au septième au classement général.
FAP comes back the other way. Amadou.
Et on met un terme à ce journal, donc rideau sur le 20h, mesdames et messieurs. Merci de nous avoir suivis. On se retrouve dès demain 20h sur les antennes de Spectrum Télévision, si bien sûr Dieu le veut. Bonsoir, bonsoir à vous Christelle Asseg.
Good night, Leila. Good night, televiewers. Thanks for joining in on the 8 p.m. Bilingual Primetime Newscast on Spectrum Television. See you tomorrow for another edition, God willing. Good night.